might be a Viking or a Saxon or a Roman, but tell me, do you like 'em? Would you sex 'em? Would you bone 'em? Would you go to bed with King Ethelred? Would you bonk William the Conqueror, romp in the sheets with Samuel Pepys? Mussolini was a meanie, led a fascist insurrection, but does he make you creamy? Does he give you an erection? Would you pork Richard the Duke of York? Does a boner start when you think of Bonaparte? Are you sexually aroused at the thought of Pol Pot? Historical hot or not?
Hello and welcome to Historical Hot or Not, the history podcast that looks at the life and times of people from history and says, yes, but would you? If you are naughty for Saint Nick, horny for King Herod, or kinky for uncompassionate innkeepers, then this is the sexy, festive podcast for you. I am Aidan McCaffrey, I am not a historian, and this is...
Catherine Mather, and I am also not a historian, but we are comedians who are horny for history, and we are going to be rating some of history's greats, and whether we would bang them or not, eh? Happy Christmas.
Happy Bangmas, Kath.
Yeah. Who will you be banging this Christmas?
Well, I'll be with my family, so it'll just be one massive incestuous gangbang, I think.
Okay, that's what. Is your wife on board, or?
Well, I hope she is, because she's the only one I'm really looking forward to banging, really. Certainly not looking forward to banging my three brothers.
Yeah, I've met one of them, and lovely man, wouldn't bang him.
Oh, damning.
Well,
Absolutely damning.
Come on, I don't think he'd bang me either, to be honest.
I think he would. He'd bang literally anything that moves, Kath.
Really?
Which is partly why he'd be so offended by this line of attack you've mounted.
Wow, I didn't get that vibe from him, but I mean, I'm terrible at reading people.
Kath and I have been told there is no room in the podcast studio, so we've had to record today's episode in a barn. We've set up the mics in a trough, also known as a manger, and we are going to birth our historical assessment right here, surrounded by farmyard animals and three wise historians, Mary Beard, Hallie Rubenhold, and Dominic Sandbrook, while the North Star looks down on us from above. And by North Star, I mean the ring light we've clipped to our laptops. Side note, Mary Beard, Hallie Rubenhold, and Dominic Sandbrook are not in the studio with us. If they were, we'd have made a much bigger song and dance about it. Mary Beard, Hallie Rubenhold, and Dominic Sandbrook, if you want to come on together separately, but crucially for free, please get in touch at Hot Not Pod on any of the major social medias.
I'd say that we're not making money from this, but if anything, it's costing us money to make this.
What we're saying is we need the charity of more famous historians, is what we're getting at. Mary, Hallie, Dominic, bring us your gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And by that I mean Zoom availability.
Mm-hmm. And listeners.
Indeed. Kath, what are you doing for Christmas? I assume it's your traditional northern poorhouse Christmas? Just you and the spinning jenny, praying for a second slop of festive gruel. Oh, please, sir, can I have some more?
Yeah, that's basically it. Have you seen my Christmases? Gonna head north, spend it with the family. What we all do is we all sleep in one room together. There's one bed, and it's a single.
And the bed is also the toilet.
It is, yes, yeah. It's really cold. Might get a new pair of pajamas out of it. Who knows? How will you be celebrating God's favourite day?
I will do what I do every Christmas, which is I'll be playing Knockout Historical Hot or Not with my family, where we assess the hotness or notness of people who died on a given date. We're actually doing December the 25th this year, so we'll be judging the hotness of Pope Adrian I, Saint Anastasia, Peter the Venerable, Emperor Taisho, and George Michael. He just sounded like the clear winner, but my kink is venerableness, so I think Peter might take it.
I forgot that he died on Christmas Day. I thought my mum was joking when she told me. Honestly, I was in bed as a child, just in bed asleep. Well, not asleep, but going to sleep. She just opened the door and was like, George Michael's dead. Night-night. Okay.
Happy Christmas. Half of Wham has cacked it.
No. He is buried in Highgate Cemetery, which is my happy place. And, but under his Greek name, and nobody knows. Well, my old housemate knew where he was and took me there.
Well, I mean, you could probably figure it out if it's like, here lies John Smith, here lies Lucy Farrow, here lies Georgios Stephanopoulos,
Well, I mean, if you want to piss off a tour guide, go to Highgate Cemetery, ask where George Michael is.
I reckon the tour guides there probably like it because for many years they've had to deal with where's Karl Marx, to which the answer is you won't fucking miss it, seriously. Or less popular, where's Jeremy Beadle buried? So I think George Michael's mixing it up for them.
I don't know. I went on one of those tours and asked where George Michael was, and they didn't like it. So, to be fair, it was me and friend of the podcast, Rachel Fairburn, who went on that tour. The tour guide, got annoyed with her for knowing too much. He accused her of having been on the tour before and just giving all the right answers. And he hated us both collectively because we were giggling too much. Which, I mean, to be fair, it's a graveyard.
It's quite sad that, because my experience of doing that tour was the tour guides, because they were volunteers.
Yeah.
You got the passion of a volunteer. Like, they seemed really into it.
Oh, yeah, he was. That's why he was pissed that we were laughing.
I mean, if you want to find his grave, his name is Georgios Kyriakos Panayiotou, and he died in 2016, 25th of December. So I don't think it'd be that hard to find.
No, but there's a lot of graves, Aidan.
It'd be amusing if he'd had a similarly elaborate grave to Karl Marx, and there was just right in the middle of the grounds a massive sculpture, unmistakably, of George Michael's head with the 1984 Careless Whisper quiff. And people were asking, where's George Michael buried? And like, we can't tell you. Is it by that massive bust of George Michael's head over there? We really can't say, sorry.
There are 4 enormous letters underneath the bust. W, H, A, and M.
I like the idea of he's actually a crucified image of Michael. And the word wham is written where INRI would be written on a Jesus crucifix. King of the pop.
He really was. R.I.P. George.
Shall we blow this festive mother out the water?
I think we should do. First, though, we do need to tell the listeners the format of the podcast, don't we? Because, I mean, there might be new listeners, in which case, hi guys, welcome to the gutter. There might be returning listeners who only listen for this bit and then switch off, in which case that's fine too. We'll take your listens, give us a like.
It's not always this filthy. So hang on, I misspoke. Yeah, sorry, it's always this filthy. This is a history podcast in which the theme is we look at the life and times of dead people from history. We look at their life, everything they did. We look at their face. And then at the end, we assess everything. And we say whether or not we'd have sex with them. If they are successful in appealing to our horniness, these people will end up on the bio tapestry, along with other such historical luminaries as Joseph II of Austria, Lord Byron, Anita Berber, Dorothy Levitt.
Turin Shroud.
Spoiler alert for the bonus feed there, but yeah, the Turin Shroud is on there. Kath said she'd rub herself on that. And that's festive as well, because that's to do with Christ.
Yeah.
And that's what we're celebrating here at Christmas. Sexy people from history, of which Christ was absolutely one of them.
Yeah, he was ripped, wasn't he?
Every depiction on the cross, abs city.
I bet he didn't have abs.
He's covered in a lot of blood, but I think it's a bit like how at the end of Blade Runner 2049, Ryan Gosling is like covered in blood, but bathed in neon. And you think, still would.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how many stigmatas he's got. Christ is still getting it.
So, I mean, we begin the episode, each and every one, with a superficial assessment of the person that we'll be discussing each week. They are all handily on the eTrozd dating app, a historical dating app. What I've done is sent the profile picture of today's subject to Aidan. Today we will be discussing Charles. He's 58 and he's from Portsmouth.
So, Charles from Portsmouth, looking at a photo of him. He's dressed seemingly in early 19th century attire.
Mm-hmm.
Looks to have a big cravat. I'm looking at a picture of a young man. He's got quite long hair. It's combed over. And then it's sort of quite big and bushy at the sides. He has his hand pressing into some paper. But he's looking out of an open window into the distance. Pensive. Thinking. As if to say, I'm an intellectual man. I think this is a good-looking guy. Suave, he's got a good face, and giving off a lot of intelligence.
Yeah, I think he's in his 20s here. But his look, I mean, he's got the round face that they all seem to have of this time, don't they? I assume that they rounded people's faces off a bit because it must have been a fashionable look or whatever.
When they were born, they would chisel off any hard angles from the skeletal frame of the face to create this look that we're seeing now.
Yeah. Oh, God, have you heard about that surgery that people are having where they're removing the cheek fat?
No.
Yeah, they look really gaunt. So, like, I think Miley Cyrus has had it, which is a shame because she's beautiful. But yeah, that's gone forever then.
I think this is true of most people who have bizarre cosmetic surgery, almost always don't need it.
Well, yeah, that is true, yeah.
They usually are already beautiful, and then they've just bought into some ludicrous beauty standard.
Yeah, like, I wouldn't judge people for having plastic surgery, but also, just make sure you're having it done for the right reasons. Just from this picture then, Aidan, which will be available to the listeners at home, would you?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, I think I would too, actually.
I want to be done literary style.
Yeah. His hair looks quite modern, doesn't it, in that picture? It looks like he'll be in a boy band.
It does have Harry Styles vibes. And then
That's
it's
exactly who I was thinking.
Yeah, it's quite thick and voluminous on the sides.
Slicked back on top. So, shall we learn a little bit about our friend here, Charles? Charles?
I would. Who could it be? A Christmas Charlie? Who could you possibly have picked?
I honestly don't know, and it's certainly not written in the title of this episode. Born on the 7th of February 1812 in Portsmouth, Charles John Huffam Dickens was the second of 8 children. His father, John Dickens, was a naval clerk who dreamed of being rich. Don't we all, John? And his mother, Elizabeth Barrow, aspired to be a teacher, but was ultimately a woman.
Which back then was enough.
It was enough, that's all you needed to be. When Charles was 4 years old, they moved to Chatham in Kent, which really was a shame, but the Dickens kids loved it and they could explore the countryside. Their parents saw the joy that this brought them, and 6 years later, in 1822, they decided to move to Camden Town. Well, now it's full of vegan cereal cafes, punks begging for drink money, and one of the worst depictions of Amy Winehouse I've ever seen in bronze. At the time, it was a very poor and deprived area.
At the time, the Amy Winehouse statue was made out of coal, so it just hasn't got much better.
No.
They're still using the wrong stuff.
Yeah, she was so young, wasn't she, Amy, when she died? I really feel for her.
28.
27.
Yes. 27.
Ah, yes, the 28 Club.
Or as I call it, the 20s Club. Just people dying in their 20s.
I've missed it now. If you could have been successful to the point that people would miss you, that weren't just your immediate family, maybe some of your friends, but you had to die at 27, would you take that?
No, because I would have missed the Doctor Who 60th anniversary special. In fact, in a really saddening thing, it's just occurred to me, I would also have missed the Doctor Who 50th anniversary specials. So, I think no.
Yeah, and your wife, you probably wouldn't have met your wife.
For the record, if she's listening, that goes without saying. That would be the thing I was most concerned about, not the Doctor Who 50th and 60th anniversary specials. My dearest loving wife.
Well, I would never have had the joy of working for the NHS had I died at 27. Yeah, I really am grateful.
You sound it.
Yeah, yeah. So Charles was a very sickly child. He was prone to spasms, which meant that instead of playing sports, he read books like a nerd. His father, John, had a penchant for living beyond his means. I'd imagine that he's the kind of person supporting tax cuts for Starbucks whilst living in a bedsit, because he fully believes that he'd be in that tax bracket one day. Those people confuse me.
Despite all evidence suggesting otherwise.
Like, neither you nor any of your family have been wealthy. Why are you behaving like you're Bezos?
It's like I read an article that described Republicans in America as leading a reverse French Revolution, marching up, going to the streets to protest, to give more power to the established rich people.
Cutting their own heads off.
Yeah, despite their neck holes.
Yes. In 1824, when Charles was 12 years old, his father was sent to Marshalsea debtors' prison in Southwark because he owed a baker, James Kerr, £40 and 10 shillings, which is £2,326 in today's money. How much fucking bread?
Bread is fattening.
Mm.
Consider it a treat.
He'd be the kind of person going around Borough Market just asking for 2 of everything in bread a head. What, those donuts are £6 each? Yeah, fuck it, I'll have a dozen.
In the first half of the 19th century, the wheat-only diet was quite a big thing going on. And it was a sort of like a equivalent of the 5-2 diet now, in which you spend the first 5 days eating wheat and the second 2 days also eating wheat.
Mm-hmm, exclusively. I think I would struggle to spend £40, let alone £2,326 on bread and baked goods. I'm not saying I couldn't, but we don't know the time frame, do we?
If challenged in a sort of Brewster's bread situation where you had 30 days to just fucking pig out on as much donuts as possible.
Yeah, to be
fair, get as much Warburtons in your belly. I'm sure we could all do it.
Yeah, as well, I'd forgot I'd not factored this in. He had 8 kids, so that's a family of 10. Although a couple of them kids died in infancy, so.
Do you reckon when they did die in infancy, do you reckon he said to Mrs. Dickens, "Good news, the bread bill's going down"?
I won't be in prison for too long. This meant that Charles had to leave school and get a job at Warren's blacking factory by what is now Charing Cross Station as a boot blacker, which is the most Victorian job I have ever heard of.
And I'm also glad that's what it was, because when you said a blacking factory, I just thought people were quite racist back then.
Uh-huh.
They industrialised blackface there. But no, it's fine. They're just cleaning shoes.
It's like the Netherlands at Christmas in here.
I don't get that. What's that a reference to?
Black Pete, don't they?
Oh, yes!
And they're like, don't worry, it's not racist. And you're like, but it is.
It sort of is a bit, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Usually, things that aren't racist don't have to have the words, "it's not racist," said about them.
Yes, and they don't usually have the prefix black.
No, and they don't black up.
It's not racist, it's just song and dance, in which loads of white people have got boot polish on their face. It's not racist. It sounds racist.
Talking of boot polish, it was Charles's job to label pots of blacking, or boot polish. He earned 6 shillings a week, which according to nationalarchives.gov is equivalent to roughly £17.23. The factory was run down and full of rodents, much like any rental property in the area today.
That's not even exaggerated satire. That's the depressing thing about that. That's just a statement of fact.
It is, yeah. I have recently left London and my home was run down and full of rodents. And I was paying a damn sight more than 6 shillings a week to be there.
I used to go to the Trocadero cinema in London when I lived there, right in the middle of Soho.
Mm-hmm.
And I would rate all the films out of 5, but it would be how many mice I saw in the screening. So it's like Avatar, 4 mice out of 5. La La Land, great film, but only 1 because I only saw 1 mouse during that.
Is that to do with the number of mice that were there, or how captivating the film was that you didn't notice the mice?
That's actually a good point. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Because in theory, if La La Land was as bloody good as everyone says it was, I wouldn't have been distracted by the family of mice eating a kernel of popcorn next to me.
John's wife, Elizabeth, so that is Charles's mum and dad, Elizabeth had to join her husband in debtor's prison with their youngest 4 children.
What?
Yeah. Which can you, the cost of incarceration of 1 person, let alone 6.
What year is this?
1824.
Right, because we know this from the Robert Peel episode that we just did.
Mm-hmm.
This is at the point before they started paying jailers, which means I think they would have had to pay for their own incarceration and their own children's incarceration, effectively.
And you're in debtor's prison. So they've removed your ability to raise funds by working and put you in a prison that costs you to be there, and then you're meant to pay to get out? I don't understand. I guess it doesn't have to make sense, does it? Aged 12, Charles had to lodge with a family friend called Elizabeth Roylance, whom he described as a reduced, impoverished old lady at 112 College Place in Camden Town. How do you think that you would get on with moving out aged 12? Do you reckon it would be like a pussy palace, or do you think that you would just be frightened and crying all the time?
I think I'd enjoy moving out on my own slightly more than I would probably enjoy being in debtor's prison as a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I think what had happened was Charles ended up losing his job at the blacking factory for whatever reason, a disagreement, and then his mum managed to get him the job back, and he never forgave his mum for sending him back. But I would argue you're having to raise money to get your family out of prison. And it's quite selfish to be pissed off at your mum for doing the only thing that she could do to save 6 people.
In a society that is not really allowing women much of an option in the kind of things they could do to raise money.
Yeah, and she had 8 children, but 4 to immediately care for.
God, it's mad what was expected of children back then. I've been watching the John Adams miniseries.
Yeah.
And this is true to life. John Adams sends his 14-year-old son to St. Petersburg alone.
Oh my God.
This isn't American. He sends his son to St. Petersburg to do a sort of clerkship.
Right.
Because he's like, this will be very good for you, John Quincy.
Fucking hell.
Now, John Quincy Adams did grow up to be a president of America and a genuinely esteemed anti-slavery advocate. So look, maybe they had the right idea back then.
Mm-hmm.
Kids today are too coddles.
Like, would you grow up getting sent to St. Petersburg, having to move out, manage your money, and work in a factory at 12? You'd just grow up, wouldn't you? You would be an adult mentally, and you would be treated as an adult physically. Like, if you aren't given the option to piss about like we were at 12.
But 12-year-olds, there's no guarantee that they have a single solitary hair on their ball. So you're talking about forcing them into emotional maturity when they may have started puberty, but it's absolutely no guarantee. Another funny thing about the John Adams thing is he goes, his very visibly prepubescent child is looking quite scared about this prospect of going to St. Petersburg by himself.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, Father, will it be cold in St. Petersburg?" And the dad says, "Not for Massachusetts, man." And I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure as cold as Massachusetts is, that St. Petersburg will be fucking colder.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But that's what Americans are like, isn't it? Oh, you don't know weather till you've been to insert state here.
To be fair, I went to New York in autumn, and I actually physically couldn't comprehend how cold it is in New York. And it was only like 2 or 3 degrees, but their 2 or 3 degrees is like the ice age has returned.
Okay. It's a different kind of cold.
It's the unbroken wind from the Atlantic. I think that's what it is.
Right, got it.
It's just hitting you in all those New York streets that are just straight lines for like 3 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Are just wind tunnels channeling the frost from the North Sea directly into the most sensitive part of your scrotum.
Why did he have your knob out?
You know, you're in New York, you've got to live the dream.
Yeah. Sorry, not your knob, just your ball sack.
Yeah.
So luckily, a few months later, in 1825, Charles's grandmother, Elizabeth Dickens, died. Hey! And he was permitted to go back to school after his father got out of debtor's prison following the family inheritance, which is the secret ingredient to every article about how a 20-something managed to get on the property ladder in a leafy suburb of Highgate.
Just stop eating avocado on toast, Kath.
Yeah, what's your problem? It's a joke, isn't it? Was it Kirsty Allsop who was like, well, I bought a house in London at 21. Your father's a fucking lord.
Oh, it's just so... I hate this small C conservative, and indeed big C conservative, thinking about, well, this did me well. And it's like, yes, but not everyone's the same as you. This total inability to step out of their own experience for a second and imagine what it might just maybe be like for someone else. God, it's maddening.
And what might have happened to house prices in the last 30 years.
My friend's dad bought a house in Harrogate,
Yeah.
lovely leafy Harrogate, for £10,000 in 1978. And this generation looking at us and going, well, if you weren't spending £3 cappuccinos every 6 seconds, well, maybe you'd be able to bloody afford a house.
The thing is, that 10 grand was a lot of money in the 70s, but it wasn't unreachable. I think that's the difference, isn't it?
And the fact that they have these plush retirements where they can go on holiday 4 times a year, and they think that's just normal, and that we'll have that. So, no, but that's the point. We won't. No. I don't think you're comprehending how. I'm not saying, it's not that they didn't work hard, that generation. It's just they were so lucky.
Yeah.
They were so lucky to be born when they were.
And I'm happy for them. I want a bit of that too, please. I was listening to the radio, one of the BBC's, I want to say maybe Radio 4, can't remember, the other day. It was on in the background, I was doing a bit of cleaning, and there was a guy trying to tell this story of poverty, and he was like, all I had was the money to put petrol into my Mercedes. You poor soul.
All I had was some diamond-studded boots and fucking shitloads of equity. I had to walk every day several feet to my computer to access my trust fund.
Yeah. Anyway, talking of poor souls, Charles, when he got out of work, which he did for about, I think it was max a year this time at the blacking factory. He wasn't there a very long time, but it traumatised him forever. That time spent in the factory, he found it quite degrading, and that became his sort of touch on the working classes, if you see what I mean. And that's where a lot of his inspiration came from. And I can imagine that he would very much be like that person who, was like, went on a holiday and had to rough it a bit in Nepal. Everything from then on was, well, when I was in Nepal for a year, you're like, oh, fuck off, mate. Like, that is somebody's life forever, and you did it for like a year, and it was too much. Not that I'm saying it was easy. I'm just saying I think he was a bit of a pussy about it, if we're being honest.
How old was he when this happened?
12. Yeah.
Fucking weakling.
I know, right?
Can't handle 12 months of hard labour when he is exactly that same number of years old.
He's putting labels on boot polish. He wasn't a chimney sweep.
That's true, fair enough.
Anyway, he attended Wellington House Academy, which was a private school, because all schools were private, because children weren't required to go to school until around the 1880s. The school doesn't exist anymore, but the site is just a stone's throw away from Coco nightclub by Mornington Crescent. The last time I was there, I was served shots by a nun on roller skates, and I imagine it was very much the same in Dickens' day. The headmaster of Wellington House Academy was William Jones, who became the inspiration for Mr. Creakle in David Copperfield. I haven't read that book, but the two common descriptives used for William Jones are strict and sadistic. How would you like to be remembered in 2 words?
Fascistic and but witty. Always could spin a good yarn, but liked to use violence to enforce his preferred policies.
Yeah, no, I'd say that's fair.
What about you?
Grumpy and sarcastic.
You can quit today. You've
Yep,
done it.
I'm there.
Your legacy is assured.
It's all I've got.
I've got the gravestone ready, and I've already chiseled those 2 adjectives into it. You're done.
Boom. Yes. Unfortunately for Charlie, his father was really, really bad at money, as most people who aspire to be rich are. And by 15, Charles had to leave school again to return to the workforce. This time, he was an office boy. It was here that he began doing freelance reporting, and within a few years, he was reporting for 2 major newspapers. And I absolutely adore that in the olden times, you could just go into these sought-after jobs. Just fall into reporting. Like, no internship, no degree, the only qualification is that you have access to a pen. You know, like how Hunter S. Thompson, he would just get like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So that I have got a suitcase of drugs and I'm being paid to write something. Can you imagine doing that now?
I mean, I'm sure if you go into some newspaper offices, it's probably not that much different in terms of the words written to drugs taken.
Are you talking about Vice?
I genuinely reckon I'm talking about most newspaper offices, and I'm not even distinguishing necessarily between, say, the Sun and the Guardian. I reckon you go into some of those toilets and you were to do a swab, it would look like a Colombian drug dealer's bathroom, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, but again, true of most workplaces in London.
True.
Apparently, there's quite a lot of coke in the River Thames.
Oh, really?
People piss it out. I didn't understand at first. I was like, what? Why are people just emptying bags of coke into the River Thames of a weekend?
You know, if a whale shows up in the Thames, the king gets access to it. Do you reckon that's why? So they can get access to the Charlie that it might be carrying about its person?
Yeah, if you eat the meat, it's consumed so much cocaine that you get high. So under the pseudonym Boz, which was a family nickname, Charles began submitting sketches to magazines, and in 1833 his first, called A Dinner at Poplar Walk, was published in London's monthly magazine. He went on to become a magazine editor for such classics as Household Words and All the Year Round. In 1836, his first book was published. Aidan, do you want to guess which book it was?
Shit, I think I know this.
I'm
Am I right in thinking it was a biggie?
not going to give you any hints here. You've got to do this all on your own, I'm afraid, friend.
I think it was David Copperfield, wasn't it?
It was, of course, Sketches by Boz. Which I'm fairly sure that we have seen at Edinburgh Fringe.
No, we saw Sketches by Boz Colon the musical.
Ah, of course, yeah, sorry. In that same year, on the 2nd of April, 1836, he married the Scottish Catherine Hogarth, who was the daughter of George Hogarth, who was editor of the Evening Chronicle, which was the first newspaper to break the news of US independence in their August 1776 edition, which is silly because it happened in July. In the 15-year period between 1837 and 1852, Catherine and Charles had 10 children, which I'm sure Catherine's Fanny was not at all happy about. I'm going to give you a quick line on each of these 10 children, because, good God. So, number 1, we've got Charles Dickens Jr. He was a banker who went bankrupt, wrote some reference books and died at 59. Then we've got Mary Dickens, a woman, who wrote a book called My Father as I Recall Him, which I assume was about Charles Dickens. Then we have Kate Dickens, who is nicknamed Lucifer Box in the family. Due to her fiery temper, and she was the only one to side with her mother and stand up to her father with his bad behaviour that is to come. Spoilers. Lucifer Box sounds rude, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds like something a bitter male divorcee would nickname his ex-wife's vagina.
Mm-hmm.
Don't miss the old Lucifer Box.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Like sort of low-level aggrieved misogyny.
Yeah, and I don't know that it wasn't misogyny then, but just not maybe vaginal.
Well, if she's calling out her dad's bad behaviour and then she's getting the nickname Lucifer Box, that strikes me as, that's misogynistic, surely?
Yeah, I think that is what misogyny is.
Yeah.
Next, we've got Walter Dickens, who was a lieutenant in the morally sound East India Company, who died of an aortic aneurysm. We got Francis Dickens, nicknamed Chicken Stalker. He worked for the Bengal Mounted Police and then Canada's Northwest Mounted Police. We got Alfred Dickens. He left a bunch of debt behind him, aged 20, and moved to Australia. Classic. We got Sidney Dickens. He was in the Navy and died in debt, aged 25, trying to get home for sick leave.
Why are so many kids dying in debt?
Well, it seems to be the family thing, doesn't it?
Too much avocado on toast. I think that's what's going on here.
Yeah, they should have cancelled their Netflix subscription, shouldn't they?
To be fair, the top-end Netflix subscription where it's like multiple account sharing plus full 4K streaming, it's quite expensive.
It is quite expensive, you're right.
Yeah. That's why I couldn't get on the housing ladder for so long. Because I wanted to watch Blade Runner 2049 in the full 2180p.
Both in my living room and bedroom simultaneously.
Exactly.
And at my neighbour's house. Henry Dickens, he was probably the most successful of Charles's children and Catherine's children, lest we forget. He had a successful career in law as a barrister, and he was knighted in 1922. Next, we've got Dora Dickens. She died aged 8 months in 1851. Presumably, she didn't have any time to accrue any debt.
I mean, you said 10. It sounds like you've named about 17 already.
We're on the last one now, don't worry. Edward Dickens, whose nickname was Plawn. He moved to Australia to be with his brother and ended up as an MP in New South Wales.
My dad, as I've said before in this podcast, he had 9 brothers and sisters. His parents had 10 children.
Pick a number between 1 and 10. Which was your dad?
I'm going to say 5. Which one was 5?
Francis Dickens, chicken stalker.
Yeah, that's all Pops.
Yeah, work for the Mounties.
Chasing poultry in the Rocky Mountains. Good old Pops.
You know what he's like. Oh. In 1842, Charles and his wife Catherine went to the United States for a 5-month lecture tour, which sounds awful. You could not pay me enough to be on a 5-month lecture tour. But there we go. Biographer J.B. Priestley wrote that during the tour, Dickens enjoyed the greatest welcome that probably any visitor to America ever had. He was anti-slavery and his talks sold out quickly. They flock around me as if I were an idol, bragged Dickens.
So was he already quite successful by this point?
Yeah, so people knew about his books and he'd been a news reporter and stuff, so people knew who he was.
I'm guessing he's only touring the north of America then, if he's being welcomed as some anti-slavery hero.
Yeah, probs. I can't see him going south.
I decided to Google Charles Dickens in America. So in New York, Boston, New Haven, yeah, this is all very, very far north. Massachusetts, where cold men live. Roosevelt Island, which I think is New York. Yeah, Pennsylvania. It's all very northern. Oh, you just go to Richmond, Virginia. Here we go. So I'm actually reading about a program called Dickens in America presented by Miriam Margolyes. Dickens visited Richmond in the hopes of understanding the South's endorsement of slavery. Miriam meets Southern journalists and reverends and is confronted by their opinions.
So that was Miriam, not Charles.
Yeah, well, both, effectively, because she's going to the places that he went.
Okay, and she's learning why slavery is bad. Because until this point, very pro-slavery. It was our friend Miriam.
I like the idea that this program goes badly wrong, and Miriam Margolyes comes out of it like, I think I'm pro-slavery. These descendants of slave owners actually convinced me. I know, I'm as shocked as you guys were.
That would be quite the show, wouldn't it?
Miriam Margolyes, an anti-13th Amendment shocker.
You know the classic Christmas Carol? How long do you think it took Dickens to write it?
This is the challenge. So I've got to go really small or big, haven't I?
Mm-hmm.
It's either going to be, it took him 15 years, which I don't think it would have done.
No.
Or he wrote it doing a particularly long toilet trip. I'm going to go for particularly long toilet trip. I'm going to say it took him 2 shits to write Christmas Carol.
You're right, yeah.
Exactly 2 shits.
Well, because obviously man shits take longer than women shits. So he wrote it in the space of 6 weeks.
I don't want to rubbish this, Kath. Sylvester Stallone wrote Rocky in 3 days.
Well, yeah, and you can tell.
Yeah, but Rocky was the biggest grossing film of 1976.
Mm-hmm.
How successful was A Christmas Carol?
Incredibly. I watched Rocky, but it was skipping. It was a video that was like a VHS that was missing parts. So I basically watched Rocky, but without any of the fight scenes.
Which makes it quite bleak, because the thing people forget about the first Rocky film is it's essentially like a gritty drama about a poor guy who's down on his luck and is trying to woo a pet shop owner whose brother's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
If you take the fights out, that's what Rocky 1 is.
Yeah, it was really sad. And I've never seen it. That's the only way in which I've seen that film. Kind of like when I bought a VHS copy of Silence of the Lambs from a charity shop. And the film was good, up until the bit where Jodie Foster has broken into the basement, and it's very tense. Is Jim Gum in there still? Oh my god! And then it cut to a documentary about birds. Someone had, which is hilarious. Bravo, 10 out of 10 for
The silence of the blue
recording.
tits.
Yeah, but honestly, it took me years to find another copy to watch it, because this was like, Netflix wasn't. I mean, Netflix was, they would send you discs in the post. That's what Netflix was at this time.
I know. Do you know, they only stopped doing that about a month ago.
Really?
Not joking. Yeah, they've been continuously sending out discs this whole time, as most of us have switched to streaming.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was a big hoo-ha about a month ago that they'd sent out their final disc.
Oh.
And it was Silence of the Lambs. And half of it was a documentary about avian migration.
God damn it. I think I still have some Netflix discs in this bookcase behind me. It was what was I watching? Boardwalk Empire. Very good until season 3. After that, Charlie Cox isn't in it anymore, and what is the point in watching it?
We watched it for Steve Buscemi, who's as good looking as Charlie Cox.
No. So A Christmas Carol was intended to be a social criticism of the UK, which very much was like all of his other works, if we're being honest. The story is, of course, in which Michael Caine is visited by a variety of puppets in the night, and upon waking decides to be nicer to the puppets that work for him. It was based on his sister, his elder sister. They had a disabled son, and Tiny Tim was based on him.
Have you read A Christmas Carol?
I've watched it.
So have I. My favourite bit is where Doctor Who, he takes the child version of the Scrooge character forward in time so that you can see what a bad person the old version of him has become, so that the Doctor can save Amy Pond and Rory.
Yeah.
Which is my way of saying, I haven't read it, I've just seen a Doctor Who version of A Christmas Carol.
Yeah, which was good.
But to be fair, it's a very, very good Doctor Who episode. Like, it's really good.
And heartbreaking.
One of the best. Really is, yeah.
It's really sad. So despite his book, A Christmas Carol, being a massive success and one of his most famous works, he actually made very little money from this book. It's kind of like Fatboy Slim with the Rockefeller skank, because he had a disagreement with the publisher. The publisher started producing illegal copies of the book, and also because he'd agreed to a high fee to Lord Finesse and others whose tracks he'd sampled. In 1851, it was not a good year for Charles. He suffered the loss of his daughter, Dora. His wife, Catherine, also suffered that loss. His father, John, also died in his mid-60s. Now, John had been sort of in and out of debtor's prison, and he kind of embarrassed Charles by asking his mates for money, which was kind of not cool. 7 years later, in 1858, he separated from his wife, Catherine, as he found that she was an increasingly incompetent mother and housekeeper, and that after birthing 10 children, she had become stout and matronly.
Oh, God.
I know it. Have you seen how he aged?
Yeah, not well.
Yeah. Fuck me. She's had 10 kids. What's your excuse, dickhead? Just stay here, right?
I kind of knew this. I knew there was some, like, deep misogyny as you got later into his life. I'm pretty sure, doesn't he do the classic middle-aged man thing of, like, banging a 21-year-old to...
Yeah, he was a proper bitch about it.
Some lame attempt to recapture his youth.
Yeah. So what he did was he publicly slandered his wife while striking up a relationship with the young actor Ellen Ternan. A relationship, it was not clear whether it began before or after he separated from his wife. However, he went to great lengths to erase evidence that Ellen was in his life, which would suggest that everything was legit and we should stop asking questions about it. All right. It is unclear how the loss of his daughter, father, and marriage affected Dickens, but the next 3 books he wrote were Bleak House, Hard Times, and Little Dorrit.
It's like if my marriage broke down and my next 3 stand-up specials were called Bleak Hour, Misery Set, and...
I Hate My Wife.
Yeah, I Hate My Wife, and Depressed Man, live from Leeds.
Kinda, yeah. So between 1836 and 1870, Dickens wrote about 15 novels, and they would come out in monthly instalments for £1 each, which was about £4. They were then released in novel form once they'd all been released for you to binge watch. Queen Victoria liked his stories, but the low price, kind of low price, made them accessible to the sort of normal person. I mean, not the working classes, because you had to be able to read, and school wasn't compulsory. So, can you imagine having to wait a month for another instalment of a story?
Well, you say that, but you have TV shows that end a season on a cliffhanger, and then you've got to wait 10 months for the next part. So, if anything, Dickens' serialization is the start of how we understand and comprehend anything that is serialized, whether it's books, novels, comics, even films now, because, Marvel films, it's just like one ongoing story that never ends. To a certain extent, it's relatable.
I guess so, but those episodes come out weekly. God, it takes so long to read a fucking book, is what I'm saying.
I mean, this is a criticism of Dickens. Now, I've only read one book of his, which is Great Expectations, and I really liked it. I think we should briefly talk about what it is that is great about Dickens. The characters are so vivid. Like, as soon as the character walks into a room in a Dickens novel, they're full of life and they really leap off the page. And it's probably like his greatest skill as a storyteller. His weakest skill as a storyteller is brevity. And this is because they were serialized and he was being paid by the word. So they just go on. They go on for fucking ever. So you're enjoying being with the characters, but
yeah,
I could enjoy being with them for, say, 25% less of the runtime.
Yes, I agree. On the 8th of June, 1870, aged 58, Charles Dickens had a stroke at his home at Gads Hill Place. Is it Higham or Higham? I don't know. I don't care. Fuck off, Kent.
I say Higham because Higham too close to Hyman.
Yes, yeah. I don't like Kent. I just need you to know that.
Why don't you like it?
Because...
The Garden of England.
You know what? I had this discussion with Peter Brush the other day, right? And he said, yeah, they call it the Garden of England, but what they don't say is that garden is full of white goods and dog shit. I've never had a good gig in Kent.
I knew that was coming, Kath. I knew it was going to come from some bad history of comic performance down there.
But I feel like you see the true side of people at these gigs. And it's not just been like, I've done poorly, I've come away from it, I didn't do very well. I can take that. But the people at these gigs have just been awful people. Like shouting stuff at you. One of them, an act nearly walked off because he kept making wanking signs and stuff at her. And you just
that's preferable to he kept wanking, which I thought was what you were going to say.
Well, yeah.
Actually, we shouldn't joke about that because that did happen to, what's that Dutch comedian we know?
Oh, Mickey Overman.
Yeah, some guy was masturbating in her Edinburgh show.
Yes. That's weird, isn't it? Can you tell the men to sort it out? Something so fucking weird.
I've got a WhatsApp group with all men,
yeah,
and I'm in it. I'll just send a message out. Stop wanking in front of my friends.
Yeah, something weirdo.
Wank about them, not in front of them.
Exactly.
Please, for the sake of feminism.
We don't need to know what's happening. So he died a day later after a stroke. He was halfway through writing Edwin Drood, which must have been absolutely fucking infuriating for people who were invested in the series.
Also quite good, as I've said. Great Expectations, too long. Maybe this early demise did the readers of Drood a favour.
Possibly, but it'd just be like, when everyone's like, for fuck's sake, George R.R. Martin, stop writing prequels, finish the book, you're old. Please, it can't end like the TV series did. Good God.
Yeah. George Martin is running a real risk of pulling off a repeat Drood.
He is. He was buried in Poets' Corner, and remains buried in Port's Corner at Westminster Abbey. I've actually been to see him there because they briefly levied the entry fee for NHS staff if you could deal with the glares of the reception staff. They were furious at letting me in for free. The sources for this episode: the Circumlocution Office, biography.com, charlesdickensinfo.com, charlesdickenspage.com. Lots of Charles Dickens' stuff. So, Aidan, would you?
No.
No. I feel like, for listeners as well, just because he broke up with his wife, because of her looks, we should include a picture of him in his old age. Just for a comparison. This one actually isn't on his e-trost for vanity reasons.
I mean, for listeners, I'm looking at an image of a 8-year-old man. It's not Tom Cruise.
No.
So this guy hasn't really got a leg to stand on, criticising his wife for the crime of having aged.
Yes. We will, of course, put both of those images up for you to have a look at and just let us know what you think, whether you'd fuck before and after. So you're saying no?
So, well, yes to before, no to after, no to personality. I think the misogyny is quite off-putting.
Yeah.
And I could maybe deal with the misogyny, but I cannot deal with the lack of a self-edit. And having read Great Expectations, that thing could do with some pruning.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lethal combination of women hating and brevity hating.
Yes.
So it's a no. What about you, Kath?
Yeah, it's going to be a no from me as well. I think the misogyny, obviously. And you know what? Like, if he had spent years, all of his life, caring for himself and his looks, and I'd let myself go, sure, okay, whatever, But he's not put the same amount of effort in. He's not put any effort in looking at that picture.
You can't even trim his beard.
No, he can't do it well.
He's got a very unkempt goatee.
Yeah, he's got a comb over. He's got wrinkles. Has he not heard of anti-aging cream? He is younger than our parents, and he looks considerably older than them.
He's only 5 years older than David Tennant.
Fuck. And I still fancy David Tennant.
I was watching the new Doctor Who episodes, as I keep banging on about. He just he's a stunning human being.
I know.
He's in his 50s and he looks astonishing.
Anyway, so it's a no from you, no from me as well.
No from me. Sorry, Charles Dickens, you do not get on the biotaplatistry.
Yeah.
And it's your own bloody fault.
It is. And he seems like a bit up himself, really. And also hasn't taught his kids how to deal with money. Like, no lessons learned. Just keeps passing that generational trauma right down.
Again, on the subject of Doctor Who, there is a very good episode of Doctor Who where the Doctor meets Charles Dickens, but it does not comment on all the things we've talked about here.
What? It doesn't talk about him cheating on his wife?
No, he's mad. It's just him running away from ghosts that are emerging from the Victorian gas network. Who'd have thunk it?
It's insane.
Who'd have thought Doctor Who was not a deep dive into the problems of misogyny in 19th century England?
Well then, suck a dick, Charles Dickens, as my grandmother used to say.
Another Christmas special in the bag. If you enjoyed this and you have not listened to previous episodes, there's loads of them, including a last year's Christmas special, which was about St. Nicholas. And if you go into the bonus bang feed, if you want to pay for some extra episodes, there is several in there, including a mini Christmas bonus episode, which Kath did about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And the history of that literary character.
Yeah, would we have sex with a deer? Who knows?
We won't spoil it. You've got to go and listen to the episode to find that out. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please share all our stuff on social media, retweet us, share our video clips to your Instagram stories.
Also, we're going to be doing a live show at Leicester Comedy Festival. That is on Friday, the 9th of
February.
Yes. Is it on a Friday?
It is a Friday, yes. Friday the 9th. I'll be doing a show 24 hours later in exactly the same location, in exactly the same slot at the Globe with a guy called Pete Kinsella. We'll be doing a split hour of comedy, so we'll be doing 30 minutes of comedy each. Come down to that. Kath is also doing a show. Are you doing it on the same night as the
Yes. So your itinerary for Leicester Comedy Festival, write it down, listeners, is Friday, 9th of February, 7:30. You're going to come and watch my show. It's called Please Just Give Me a Chance. Very well reviewed by Rolling Stone magazine at the Edinburgh Festival. Come and give that a little watch. It was, yeah.
Oh, nice. That really sounded like you were making that
up. No, genuinely was. And then you get a little half-hour break, go and have a pee, go and get a drink, come back 9 p.m. when you can come and watch Historical Hot or Not, The Globe, Leicester. That's 9 till 10. We'll wrap it up at 10. It's going to be a lot of fun. It is going to be not Larry, but we've got some ideas to make it not boring, solid history on a Friday night. And then on Saturday, pop back over 9 p.m. The Globe and watch a little bit of Aidan and Pete, I guess, as well. But Aidan.
Peter's a funny guy. Do you know Pete Kinsella?
Yeah, I know Pete. Good guy.
Yeah, he's a fun guy, isn't he?
Yeah. He's done his time after the incident, and no, I'm taking the piss. He's not done anything. He's a good man.
He looks like someone who might have done something.
Don't we all?
Which is part of his comedy, because Peter's a big, burly, tattooed guy, but he is an absolute teddy bear of a man.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of his comedy stems from the fact that people in public don't seem to trust him, even though he's probably the most trustworthy person you would ever likely to meet.
Yeah, far more trustworthy than you.
Oh, obviously. We won't say who we're doing the Leicester Square live episode about.
Well, not Leicester Square, just Leicester.
Sorry, Leicester. Sorry. We won't say who we're doing the Leicester show about, but if you consider the location at which it is being performed, you might be able to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who has a historical connection to the area.
Yes.
I'll leave you to think on it.
We will also have merchandise. We got some pretty cool merchandise. We got mugs. We got fridge magnets. We've got tote bags. I think we've still got a few condoms left. We've got some badges. We've got stickers. Oh, we've got so much blooming stuff, haven't we?
We've got merch coming out of all available orifices.
So,
and on that note, spread your legs, spread the word.
And remember, it's not what's on the outside, it's what's on the inside of the coffin that counts. Thank you. Goodbye.
See you in the new year, everybody.
You have been listening to Historical Hot or Not, written and created by Aidan McCaffrey and Catherine Mather. The podcast art was by our good friend Richard Todd, and our theme music by excellent musician and also good friend David Eagle. We also have music by Ergo Fismes, letter license from the Free Music Archive. If you've enjoyed us and you would like to donate to the cause, we would love you to do that also. You can find us at ko-fi.com/hotnotpod, and you can download bonus episodes of Historical Hot or Not from Acast Plus. The link is available on our Linktree, linktree.com/hotnotpod. Bye!